There's a lot of talk about North Korea in the news lately, with historic talks in the works to denuclearize the Korean peninsula, and talks of bringing the country back to some normality in terms of its people and the calamities that face the North Korean people, such as starvation and being completely isolated and separated from the world. And while things look good and there might be a chance that the country could rejoin the rest of the world in peace and prosperity, the Hermit Kingdom, as it's called, is well known for its secrecy. So with that, we bring you 5 secrets North Korea doesn't want you to know. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Its GDP per capita is among the lowest in the world. It might not come as a surprise that North Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world due to sanctions that have been imposed on the country over the past few decades because of its relationships with other countries. But this isn't the only factor that's left the majority of the 25 million people who live in the country destitute. Poor central planning and the elimination of markets has produced a GDP per capita of less than $2,000, which makes it among the lowest in the world. The country has very little when it comes to markets, and most food stores carry very little product. Because of this, the government allows individuals to trade food and clothing with each other. But it wasn't always like this. When Kim Jong-un's father was in power, he did not allow such things. When he died in 2011, Kim lifted many of the restrictions on local markets. This kind of support for his people is what has won Kim Jong-un support from his people, even though most are so poor that they can barely afford enough food to survive. There were, in fact, stories that North Korea faced a famine as the country was building nuclear weapons to attack the United States in 2017. During that same year, there was a drought, which was said to be the worst in 16 years. Despite this, the country spent a huge portion of its budget on the development of nuclear weapons and failed to provide adequate food for its people. Remember that low GDP? The country spent nearly a quarter of this money on the military. Even though that GDP is very low, the percentage it spent on the military is the highest in the world. 2/3 of the people in the country rely on food aid, but 2 out of 5 North Koreans are undernourished. And even though it doesn't seem to have made big headlines, in the mid-1990s there was a famine in the country that's believed to have taken the lives of 1 million North Koreans, and they starved to death. That was around 5% of the population at the time. Part of this was due to the fall of the Soviet Union, which ended all aid, trade concessions, and cheap oil. However, in today's North Korea, Kim Jong-un is said to enjoy a lavish lifestyle, which includes a large amount of expensive alcohol and imported cheese from Switzerland. One look at Kim and it's quite obvious that he is not starving. Number 4. Blackouts in North Korea. If you don't think it's possible to weaponize electricity, then you need look no further than the Kim regime. When a country's poor, there are shortages of more than just food or clothing. In North Korea, there's also a shortage of electricity. Keep in mind that the country has around 25 million people as of 2016, although that might not be an accurate estimate since not much information that is accurate makes it out of the country. The country doesn't have nuclear reactors to produce electricity for its people. Most of the power comes from North Korea's Wonsan No. 5 hydropower station. Hydroelectricity accounts for about 73% of North Korea's power production, with coal providing the rest. Thousands of liters of water pour through the generators of Wonsan No. 5 every hour, which is supposed to produce 60,000 kilowatts per hour. However, actual production is just a fraction of this, and the production rate is said to be normalized at just 25,000 kilowatts per hour, which is just a bit more than 40%. In fact, the country's power generation is about half of what it used to be in the 90s. What this means is that after a certain time at night, the citizens of North Korea have the electricity shut off, leaving them in the dark. The capital city of Pyongyang is incredibly dim for a capital city, the light of the moon often outshining the pale glow coming from the apartments. And that's from 1 in 3 North Koreans who actually have access to electricity. Authorities ration electricity based on priority, and staff at more important factories or prestigious projects like the Tandanggang Brewery or the capital's Kaesong Youth Park have precedence over citizens. Other places, such as steel manufacturers like the Chomila Steel Complex, have an unlimited and guaranteed supply, of course. You can't build weapons or rockets without steel. Some citizens have solar panels and you can see them across balconies, and those who don't have any solar energy, such as students, gather under streetlights at night to read their books. With that being said, North Korea is probably the most solar-powered country on the planet, but those solar panels can only provide power to small things or things that consume far less electricity. Satellite views of North Korea at night paint an eerie picture of the situation, and the country can be seen as almost completely black, while South Korea and China are well lit up. Number 3. North Korea internet ban. If you're watching this video, chances are that you probably have unrestricted access to the internet, and chances are very good there aren't any North Korean citizens watching this video, or that they will ever see it. The one thing that many people don't consider is that in order for a dictator to have complete control over their people, you need to turn off any sources of outside information that would show them what the outside world is like. The only people in the country that have true internet access are the very small group of government officials, political leaders, and Kim Jong-un himself. But even the diplomats of the country have to be very careful about what they do, and they're not allowed to access the internet through their smartphones. North Korea has banned the use of the internet for them, even if they aren't in the country. If any of those diplomats ignore this and are found accessing the internet, they are forced to return home to face severe punishment. And punishment in North Korea can be very severe, but we'll get to that later. North Korea does have what is called an intranet that is rumored to have about 5,000 or so websites that only have information about entities that exist inside the country. This network includes a search engine, email, some interstate news coverage, and a browser that was built by North Korean engineers. In North Korea, this intranet is free to use, but only certain people are allowed to have a computer, so with that said, most people in North Korea do not have computers, and you need government permission to own one. And even if you got permission, you would have to give up an entire 3 months' salary. And the computers aren't anything that comes from any manufacturer outside of the country. These are specially built machines that look like they're running Apple software, but the country has its own operating system called Red Star OS, which is skinned to look like the Apple operating system. This is likely because Kim Jong-un has a thing for Apple computers, and in one of his videos can be seen working on an iMac. How he got that computer is another story, since Apple is sanctioned away from making any sales of computers or any other hardware in the country. The operating system is rumored to have a Firefox clone as its browser, with only access to the intranet. Wi-Fi in the country is banned, and there's only one internet service provider that has just 1,024 IP addresses. To give you some perspective of this, the UK alone has over 123 million or so IP addresses. Number 2. 3 generations of punishment. When it comes to having a tight grip over the country and its people, North Korea has well-known laws of extreme punishment. According to sources, in the remote north of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, 200,000 plus political prisoners are locked up in a secret network of internment camps. You could just call these places political labor camps because, well, that's exactly what they are. The camps were built shortly after the Korean War as brutal North Korean dictator Kim Il-sung needed to put an end to dissent by executing revolutionaries and imprisoning political traitors. North Koreans who end up in these prisons might not even be guilty of any crimes whatsoever, but there are some that are there because of attempted escape, political infidelity, or any other actions that threaten the Kim Jong-un communist regime. But as previously mentioned, there are probably thousands who have no idea why they're suffering in such terrible places. The reason for this is what the country deems as guilt by association. What that means is that if a family member does something wrong, he or she put the whole family in danger. And not just the immediate family, but 3 generations of that family. That's right. You can be locked up for something your great-great-grandfather did. That is, if the next 2 generations are born in the camps, in which you will also remain. This is done to wipe out the seed of what are called class enemies. Even some of the crimes that citizens are sent to these prison camps for are nothing short of absurd, such as failure to wipe the dust off the portraits of leaders and having contact with South Koreans. However, one of the worst crimes is trying to leave the country, because when someone escapes, the outside world learns just how bad living in North Korea is compared to the rest of the world. Number 1. No freedom of movement. With everything else we previously mentioned in this video, it won't come as a surprise that not only are people not allowed to leave the country, but even movement inside of the country is restricted to certain places. It might be said that when demonizing the bad behavior of an enemy country or state, it's quite easy to vilify the citizens. In fact, some propaganda that is allowed out of the country that pertains to citizens would be the threatening of Americans, as in one video of a North Korean citizen saying that, given the chance, he would kill an American. Hope I never meet that guy. But not all citizens are brainwashed robots, nor have a love for the Kim Jong-un regime. It's quite possible that the majority of the country's citizens are desperate to be liberated from this brutal regime. But if you wish to travel to another country, you may as well forget this prospect, unless you're a diplomat for the country. And if you want to travel inside the country, then you need to have a very good reason or specific purpose for doing so. And if you don't live in Pyongyang but are seeking to get to the capital city, you'll likely be denied, because this is where most of the country's resources are located. With the latest in talks and many good things happening concerning North Korea, we might see some incredible changes when it comes to the things mentioned in our video. But until then, the secrets will remain. Hope you enjoyed the video, Top 5ers. If you haven't already, check out our other channel, Americano, to enjoy even more amazing list videos. There will be a link in the description, so check it out, as well as our other